Hello, friendly friends. Hello, hello. Good to see everyone. Welcome here. If you're here and you haven't said hi, shoot us a hi in the chitty chat so we know that you're here. In the meantime, Leslie, will you do me a favor and send me the exact wording I said for the topic of tonight? I'm so in packing and moving brain that I forget the things I say I'm going to talk about. Okay, so in general, though, I know, thank you, she has sent it to me. Let me throw it actually in the comments here so we all can see it. Hi, guys, welcome here. Good to see everybody. Say hi if you're here. We have a nice small little group tonight, it looks like. That's okay. All right, here's our topic. So when should we be in acceptance and when should we do something to change it? And then the description of said topic is come with your questions about whether to heal, fix, change something, or let it be what it is. Come with your questions about when to speak up and when to let go. So I'll talk a little bit about this, and then I really would love to hear from you guys on this topic, because one of the main points about this topic is that it's, I mean, like so many topics, this one is so dependent on the situation. Every situation is unique, and every situation has givens and pieces of context and considerations to factor in when one is trying to decide, do I do something about this? Do I try to change it? Do I negotiate? Do I bring it up? Do I not bring it up? And each situation is unique. So it's challenging on this particular topic to generalize a lot. But I will say a few things. I will say as many generalizey things as I can about this topic. And then I really, really, truly going to need to hear from you guys. So while I'm talking, if you haven't already, if you can think about what would you like, what's a specific example of a situation where, or an issue with yourself? Because remember, we're talking tonight both about something in yourself you might not be sure if you should change or accept, or something in someone else that you're not sure if you should try to talk it out, try to bring it up, or just accept it as it is. The baseline, so think about what you want to bring up, and please, I'm going to need you to throw topics in or specific questions, because again, this is a real topic where it's really, really true that this is a case-by-case kind of situation. Very difficult to generalize on this topic. But here's a few things I can say about it. One is, and bear with me with this, but a lot of this is dependent on your human design. It depends. Do you have a defined ego? Do you have an open ego? It depends. Do you have, there's a million gates and channels you can have that may be relevant to the situation at hand. So human design matters. I would look at your chart before I try to figure out anything about this, and I would need to hear about the specific situation. Okay, that's thing number one. Thing number two is, generally speaking, in the broadest sense of things, when to speak up and when to accept. One important decision-making sort of turning point on this topic is you have to look at which of your needs are not getting met and how important to you are those needs, which takes us to how much do you value yourself and how much do you value the relationship at hand. So I'm going to make up a fake example just to make a point. So I don't know, let's say, actually, you know what? I'll take a real life example with a thing I dealt with a while back, a couple years ago. I had a friend who was a lot younger than me and had a lot of trauma. And I was pretty far down on my trauma healing path and learning what's mine, what's other people's, learning how to speak up for myself, how to get my needs met, learning that it's okay to share my vulnerability, learning that it's okay to be a mess in front of my friends and to need help, that crying is healthy, all kinds of stuff that I had learned being an old lady that my younger friend had not really yet internalized into her heart. So there was a way that in this dynamic, this is a real story, this is not a made-up example. In this dynamic, regularly things would happen for my friend where she would get triggered by something I would do. And we had a very deep connection, even though there was a big age difference between us. And every time she would be upset by something, I could tell she was upset, A, because she would pull away and stop texting me, and B, because I could feel it in the heart connection between us. You know how when you have a deep heart connection with someone, you can feel when something's off, and I'm like crazy psychic. So I'm feeling the heart connection off, and I'm hearing her thoughts, and I'm watching her go through trying to figure out whether to say something or not, and struggling so much with it. And I remember thinking, wow, I remember when it was really, really hard for me. And I have a lot of empathy for this situation, because I remember when it was really hard for me to figure out, when do I say something and when do I just freaking let it go? Because I was watching this younger friend who has a lot of trauma not have any idea when she could bring stuff up with me. So I kept doing this thing that I know how to do, which is be very upfront and very kind. I would say, hey, if something's ever going on, you can always tell me. And if you're struggling with something I've said, I'm very open to hearing your feedback on how it landed for you, or if you need me to say it a different way, or if something I said hurt your feelings, like, you can tell me, and I'm really open to you telling me. That was the first action I took. And so sometimes when this friend would get triggered, they would tell me what had happened because I had opened the door to them being able to. But other times they wouldn't. And I'd wind up leaving voice memos or messages saying like, hey, so seems like something's off between us. Did something happen? Did I say something in a way that hurt your feelings? What's going on? Fill me in. And whenever I would do that, this much younger friend would eventually come around and say, okay, well, here's what happened. And when you said this, I felt bad, but I didn't know how to say anything, and I didn't want to make a big deal of it. And another time it was, I had feelings because I misinterpreted what you said. There was a lot of different things that would come up for this friend in response to me. But every time she had a really hard time just talking to me about it. And yeah, I just had a lot of empathy for her. So in the long run, what happened was, it ended up that this friend had kind of romantic feelings for me that I wasn't aware of. And she told me she had romantic feelings. And when those feelings were revealed, it really explained why so many of the reactions to me that she was having were so high and so heated, because there was this extra layer of charge because she had all the romantic feelings, and she was hearing me talk about all these dates I was going on with other dudes, like with dudes. And so it was painful for her. So there were two layers. There was her trauma. There were actually three layers. There was her trauma with her childhood, where she learned you don't get to have needs and you don't get to speak up for them because people get mad at you and punish you when you do. And then there was the social contract, because she's so young. Young people tend to think they have to be cool all the time. And being cool doesn't allow for vulnerability. So when you're cool, you have to be like, I'm good. Nothing's wrong. I'm all set. I'm good. I'm not needy. I don't have needs. So she was wrestling with that. And then there was this layer of like having romantic feelings, which of course like blows your heart open and makes you so vulnerable that it feels like extra painful and difficult to ever bring anything up. So my young friend was really dealing with a lot of obstacles to getting her needs met in her relationship with me. So I bring up this example because it's a perfect example to show that everything we're talking about has to do with getting needs met. But in order to get needs met, you need a bunch of tools. Like I've had a lot of learning to do on this topic for myself. And when I look back at how much I've learned about it, I realize how many steps there are along the journey of getting our needs met. There's a lot of pieces to it that if you weren't taught these pieces, they are uncomfortable pieces to internalize and learn. So, for example, first thing you have to do is realize a need isn't getting met. So in her case, let's take the example of when she realized she was having feelings for me, but every time we would hang out, I'm going like, this dude on a date, and I went on this date with this other dude, and I can't wait for this date tomorrow with this dude. And each time I would say dude and date, it would sting her heart a little bit. I mean, I learned this later, right? So first thing she needed to do was recognize this hurts too much and I can't tolerate this. Like she had to catch it first and go, ow, 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 enough times to realize this is hurting. I need to do something different. So her coping strategy is to run away from conflict. So she stopped texting me, stopped hanging out with me, stopped going to all the places we would go together normally. That's a defensive coping strategy. Now, I'm a smart, evolved wizard lady. So I called her out and I said, seems like you're disappearing. What's going on? AKA, seems like you're in a coping strategy or a defensive strategy, and you're not being direct with me and asking for your needs to get met. What's up? Well, poor her. Eventually, finally, she was able to say, she went away for a couple weeks and came back and said, all right, this is really hard to say. My therapist tells me I have to say it. I'm going to try. This is really uncomfortable. And she was crying when she told me, which was very sweet to me. I was very touched by that. I had no judgment of it. And she said, I have romantic feelings for you. So every time you talk about a dude, it breaks my heart a little. And I was like, oh my God, I had no idea. So because I'm healthy and loving, and I love this friend and I wanted her to feel good, I just met her pain point with compassion and mercy and empathy and understanding. And I just said, oh my God, I'm so sorry. I've been up your ass about dudes when you're crushing on me, even though I'm sure it's probably going to pass and it's a small crush. And she was like, I don't know, maybe. And I was like, okay, either way, I'm so sorry. So I apologize because I didn't know I was crushing her heart every 20 seconds. And once I knew, all I had was just empathy and a willingness to do whatever she needed to feel better. So I said, whatever you need, if you need to take time away and not talk for a couple months, if you need to process it, whatever you want to do. And she was very grateful. And she said, that went a lot better than I thought it would go. And I said, yeah, when you have direct, vulnerable, honest conversations about getting your needs met. In her case, the need was to not feel stabbed in the heart every 20 seconds when we're having a conversation. When your vulnerable expression of what you need is met with empathy and compassion, you learn that the world is a safe place to have needs and vulnerabilities. But when people like you and I, you guys, and my friend in the story, were raised by people who, we're not in judgment of our parents, but we're acknowledging their limitations. Okay. You can acknowledge somebody's limitation without holding them in judgment about it. Okay. So when you were raised by people who didn't have the capacity to meet your needs all the time with empathy and compassion, and they didn't know how to teach you how to get your needs met or how to ask for what you need, how to own what you need, ask for what you need, how to do it kindly, but clearly and directly, and then how to let go of the results. When you didn't get taught that, it feels very terrifying to try to get your needs met. So then you hem and haw in your head all day long. Should I say something? Should I not? I don't want to bother them. Am I being too needy? Am I being too crazy? The bottom line is, if you have a need that is not getting met, you're going to need to bring it up so that the need can be met. If the need is not getting met, it means the person in front of you, let's say it's by another person, we're talking about a relational example right now. If the need is not getting met, they either don't know that you need it or they don't care. And the only way to find out if they don't know or they don't care is you have to bring it up. So that brings us to the next step in this very difficult journey, which is, how do I bring it up, right? People in healing sessions oftentimes need guidance and direction and support and help in figuring out how to say things. Like, how do I bring it up? What do I say? And some of the general kind of guidelines I can give you about this are, you want to never go to the energy of blame, shame, judgment of the other person. You never want to blame, attack, shame, or judge the other person, even subtly, subtextually, or covertly. You also don't want to punish them. You don't want to blame, judge, shame, or punish someone when you're trying to get a need met. First of all, people don't respond well to blame, shame, judgment, and attacking. So then you definitely don't get your needs met. And what we each have to get masterful at is owning, like really being in touch with yourself enough to know, hold on, while I'm trying to get this need met in this conversation with my friend, am I blaming them? Am I judging them? Am I attacking them? Am I trying to punish them? Am I showing them how superior I am, which is a form of punishment, and putting them down? If we're doing any of those things, either subtly or overtly, covertly or overtly, it doesn't matter on what level you're doing them, the other person is going to feel it. People feel everything you do and be and are in a conversation. No matter how good you are at acting, people feel it. Okay. So what we have to do is we need a formalized structure, some of us anyway, of how to approach difficult requests, because getting your needs met comes after you've made a healthy functioning request. If the person you've made a request of is available to give you that thing and meet that need. This is the worst part about trying to get our needs met, is that you may discover that the person on the other end of the dynamic you're in can't meet that need. So it's very emotionally vulnerable and risky to ask them if they'll meet your need, because some part of you knows maybe they can't. And then that's going to hurt again. So here you are in your dynamic, you're not getting your needs met. It hurts already. If you ask to get it met, they may not be able to or may not want to, and that may feel rejecting to you. So now you're going to get hurt another time. So you might say to yourself, why would I even take the risk to ask or try? And the answer is because you want to be a conscious, loving, healthy, functioning adult. You don't want to be a child who's responding in their adult life the way that their defensive structures taught them to respond in childhood. When we go to our defenses in our relational dynamics, our avoidance patterns, our attacking, shaming, judging, removing, pretending everything's fine, compulsive, addictive behaviors instead of asking questions, that is going back into the past and behaving like the injured child we once were, rather than being present in the moment and behaving like a healthy, integrated, functioning adult. Now, let me be clear. There have been so many times in my life where I have behaved like an integrated, healthy, functioning adult when I was not yet an integrated, healthy, functioning adult. I was all fucked up inside, but I learned how to behave like an integrated, healthy, functioning adult. And you can do the same. So people like to use the excuse of like, I'm so broken and I'm so injured, I don't know how to do it, so I can't, and I'm just broken and I can't. And it's like, well, you can learn the tools of what to say, how to say it, and what energies to bring, even if you're not perfectly whole in the center of yourself. So let's look at what some of those structures are. When you have a need that's not getting met in a relationship, the first thing you have to do is you have to state what has occurred in a way that is non-blaming, shaming, judging, or attacking of the other person. So in my friend's case, let's use that example again. A healthy way for her to come to me would be to say something like, so here's some context. I have feelings for you. That's context. So now that I know that, that's going to expand my empathy for her. Then she might say something like, so when you do blank, it makes me feel blank. Not, you do this thing and you're an asshole because of it, or you do this thing and you're so inconsiderate. We don't point fingers, we don't call names, and we don't blame, shame, judge, or attack, even on a subtle, unconscious level. Instead, we own how we're feeling about a behavior they're engaging in. Here's the formula. When you do blank, I feel blank. Part 3 of that is, would you be willing to do this other thing instead? I'm going to say it again. When you do blank, I feel blank. Would you be willing to do this other specific thing that you're going to tell them instead? So in my friend's case, she essentially did that with me. She said, when you talk about dating dudes, I feel stabbed in the heart. I feel hurt. It breaks my heart. Would you be willing to not talk about that so much? And I, of course, because I love her and care for her, said, 1,000,000%, I don't have to talk about any of that with you if that's what you need, because I value the needs of my friends. Now, here's where it gets sticky. Not everybody you're going to have needs with is real good at meeting other people's needs. And not everybody you're going to have needs with is practiced at being kind around the specific needs that you might have in that moment. So this is where it gets tricky and relational dynamics are complicated. Ideally, you want to be in relationships with people who are safe to come to with needs. So the question of the day was, right, what we're talking about here today to kind of bring this all together. How do I know when to accept a thing and just let it be what it is? And how do I know when to bring it up? In this friend's case, she brought it up because our friendship was valuable enough to her that she wanted to try to find a way to make it work. She also brought it up because there was enough good stuff going on in our dynamic that she didn't want to lose the friendship for one bad thing. Now, she could have brought it up with me out of codependent fear of being abandoned or not liked or judged. That would not be a useful reason to bring it up with me. But that's not why she brought it up. She brought it up because she was like, I value this friendship. Maybe there's a way to salvage this friendship if I can possibly get my need met. So she asked me if I would meet her need, and I absolutely said yes, and I did. And that particular interaction went well. And what we did in practical reality was I fully stayed out of her face for a bunch of weeks until she was ready to be friends again. And I let her come to me. And eventually she came to me and was like, what's going on? And I was like, stuff. And then we hung out. And then I just didn't talk about dudes because I knew it would hurt her heart. No point in doing anything that hurts anybody's heart. So she employed all of the tools that make getting your needs met work. When on the other end of the relational dynamic, you've got someone else who's kind and cares about you and wants to meet your needs, which you won't always have. And when you discover that the person on the other side of you not getting your needs met is still unwilling to meet your needs, you may be discovering one of two things. It's either they can't meet that need. It's one of three things. They can't meet that need today, but they're going to work on it. And one day maybe they can, and that makes it worth it for you to stick around. 2, they can't meet that need at all, and they do a terrible job of it, and you leave feeling worse, and that is not your friend. Or 3, they can meet the need, and they do in the moment, and everything's great. Or maybe 4, they sort of meet the need, but they sort of don't, and then you have to renegotiate again going forward. This is where we come back to everything in relational dynamics is transactional. It just is. But remember, transactionalness in relationship does not mean there's no love. You can love someone and simultaneously acknowledge the transactional nature of relationship. Relationships are transactional. I give you something, you give me something back. That's how it goes. And if I'm giving and giving and giving and not getting much back, or what I'm getting back isn't meeting my needs, I'm going to have to say something about that. Because the silent contract we share in a friendship is we're going to have an equal amount of needs met. Otherwise, there's no point to this dynamic. So how do you know when to bring it up and when to not? How do you know when to accept it and when to not? If your needs are so badly not getting met that you're in pain every time you interact with the person, or your needs are so badly not getting met, but you're pushing it down so hard that you're starting to get sick, physically sick, or your needs are so badly not getting met that you're pushing it down, but you're angry every time you see them because you feel like you're pushing it down and you're not saying something you need to say. These are times when you need to say something, but you're going to want to say it in a way that doesn't make the other person feel like you're blaming, shaming, attacking, or judging them, even covertly. And I would encourage a lot of you to really start to deeply investigate. On some level, am I trying to punish this person when I ask for my needs to get met? Do I want them to know they fucked up just a little bit? On some level, am I trying to attack, shame, blame, or tell them that they caused this and it's their fault? If that's where you're coming from, that interaction is not going to go well. And this is a large part. I can't tell you how many times people in healing sessions say to me, like, well, I didn't tell them because I didn't want them to think I was blaming them. And then my response is, well, you have to learn how to tell them in a way that is not blaming them. So when I say to you, hey, when you blank, I feel blank, could you please do this instead? There's no blame in that. There's just, when you do that, the way that lands for me is this: would you be willing to do this thing instead? That's not blame. That is having a boundary, having a need, speaking up for it, and finding out what the other person has to say. Okay, so I'm going to leave that there for now. That's the basic gist of with other people. Now, remember, I started this conversation today by saying I really want to hear your examples, because this is a real case of where we need to hear case by case. And sometimes I'll have to use my psychic spidey senses to tune in to get a sense of things. And other times we're going to want to look at your human design chart to get some background on who you are and who they are and how you guys operate together. But in a big, broad, general way, that's the bottom line on that front. Now, when it comes to something inside yourself, how do you know when it's something to try to heal, process, clear, integrate, and when it's something that just is a part of who you are? And I have a couple hints for you on this one. One, if it's causing you strife in all of your relationships and it's a thing inside of you, more than likely you need to work on that thing inside of you. You might need some coaching. You might need some therapy. You might need some healing work. You might need all of that. You might need some psychic downloads, etc. So if the thing in you is causing challenges in all of your relationships, probably you're going to want to look at that. Okay, it does. Now, I didn't say probably you're going to want to change it, fix it, be somebody else. No, but you're probably going to want to sit with it and look at it and learn something about it. In other words, you're probably going to have a bit of a journey with that thing. I want to give some examples, but I'm going to pause on that. So that's number one. If it's causing consistent problems in your relationships with other people and you've identified what it is inside of you that is causing that specific repetitive problems in relationships with other people, that's a time when you're going to want to look into, like, what is my part in this dynamic and how can I adjust this? This is another thing I like to talk a lot about, which is when we discover that we have a role in creating a dynamic over and over again with the people in our lives, we don't need to then, what people often think they have to do is, if I'm controlling, I have to become totally allowing. We go to 180 degrees, the opposite of the thing that we're doing that isn't working. And then we wonder why that doesn't work. And the reason that doesn't work is the answer to a problem is not ever to just, well, it's not never, but it's rarely to just 180 the problem and do the opposite. Okay. If you're a doormat and you let people walk all over you, the solution to that is not to become an aggressor and start walking all over other people. The solution to that is to learn how to speak up for yourself and make requests of people that they not walk all over you. Also, the solution to that is to build some boundaries, but you don't have to be a bulldozing asshole in order to have boundaries. There's a middle ground. And 9 times out of 10, what's required is that we find the middle ground on the issue at hand, that we adjust the quality rather than throw the quality out the window. So let's go back to control as an example. If I'm controlling, which I totally am, and I notice that in all my relationships, people pull away from me when they feel like I'm trying to control them, I'm going to need to adjust where I'm controlling other people. But I'm also going to want to look at, how is the control that's built into my personality actually a useful skill? Where is this control applicable? I'll speak for myself and say, when it comes with regard to control, there are many places in my life where applying it is appropriate at certain moments in certain contexts. And there are many, many other places in my life where applying it is inappropriate in the context I'm in. Certain moments require control. So for example, if I'm teaching a class, I need to have control over how long I talk so I don't keep you too late. If I'm running a group I do a lot of leading groups and talking to groups and stuff. If I'm doing stand-up comedy on a stage, you better believe I better be in control of that room. I am in full control of that room when I'm doing stand-up comedy. Why? Because the contract you and I have made when you come to a stand-up comedy show is I'm going to make you laugh consistently and regularly over the course of this hour. So in order to make you laugh, that is a very controlling act. I have to like say certain words in a certain order with certain rhythm so that you will laugh. And I have learned how to manipulate time and space in such a way that you will probably laugh at the end of the sentences I say. But that's because I have become manipulative in a productive, useful way. That is the appropriate application of control. I'll give another example. If I'm in the car with friends and there's 4 or 5 of us and everybody has a different idea of where they want to go to dinner, and every time we hang out, I'm like, well, we're going to Chinese. I'm deciding. Some people might be able to go with the flow of that, but eventually there's going to be somebody who's like, do I ever get to fucking decide? So that would be an inappropriate use of control. Okay, so I see a few of you have questions. Let's start in with some of your questions. Before I do, let me just wrap up this thought. So when it's something in you that's causing challenges in the dynamic, okay, which is a very hard thing to discern, because how do you know when it's you and when it's them, right? That's where this gets really subtle, and oftentimes we need a lot of life experience to gain the wisdom to know when it's them and when it's you. And that's when it can be helpful to have a session or call your therapist or whatever. So when it's something in you that's messing with your relational dynamics, and or when it's something in you that is causing, this was my next point, causing you a lot of tension or tightness in your body. And this is where it requires that we each be very present in the moment. See, even when I do Katie churches like this is just an hour of talking and responding to questions and sometimes channeling, and psychically answering things, all of which are things that are very easy for me, very natural. But if I start to push, how do I explain? If I'm communicating with you guys in a way where I'm going too fast and I'm not connected to my own breath, or I'm trying to say so many things all at once that I lose connection to my own breath, I start to feel really tight in my upper back and I lose connection to my low belly. And that makes me feel like I'm out of breath. And I don't like feeling out of breath. I don't like feeling not centered. I don't like feeling not peaceful. So even right now, as I'm talking to you and doing this weird thing with my eye, I'm recentering myself, slowing myself down, softening my channel at the back of my neck, softening my will center at the upper back, and making a bunch of choices that bring me back to peace. Because I was getting pushy with my delivery in a way that was causing my body pain. So that requires that I be willing to be in touch with my body enough to know what's going on with me. Because guess what? Your body is always 100% of the time communicating with you about where you're at and how you're behaving. It's always giving us information about what we're doing and whether what we're doing is actually working for us. If you don't feel peaceful and centered and serene and comfortable and in the flow when you're doing anything, you're going to want to look at what is it that you're doing in your energy field that's taking you out of center. Okay, let's take some questions and talk about this from your guys' perspective. So Bill says, do you feel that business working relationships are different from personal ones? My life experience has been that the personal, is usually emotionally charged, and it's difficult to get past the emotionalism. Yeah. Well, okay. It's difficult to get past emotionality when one or both parties in the dynamic is coming at the conversation about the dynamic in a way that makes the other people feel bad. So what I would encourage you to do, Doc, is look at, or Bill, I know who you are, is look at everywhere it's been emotionally charged. Usually what that means is somebody's going too fast. Somebody's not listening to the other person. Somebody feels unheard, unseen, and devalued. And somebody else needs to slow down, tune in, drop in, take a breath, and receive the other person. rather than bulldozing forward at them, or in the other direction, collapsing down on the ground and becoming bulldozed. So a lot of times, like 9.9 times out of 10, it gets so emotionally heightened in personal dynamics because nobody's the boss in a personal dynamic. When you're at work, it's different in that people's livelihood depends on the boss not firing them. So there's a power dynamic at play. So of course it's easier at work, because at work you have to put your feelings aside. You have to rise above. You have to act from your higher self. Otherwise you lose your job. And so do the people under you. So the people under you are treating you nice and even keeled and very appropriate and kind because their jobs are at stake. At home, nobody's job is at stake. So everybody's an equal. That's why home dynamics are harder. So yes, they're different, but they both require the same set of tools. If you want to be someone who is considerate and patient and really hears other people at work, then you can apply these same tools at work. So the emotionalism is usually because somebody's triggered because one person or another in the dynamic is not doing a very good job in the conversation. It's 9 times out of 10 not about the content of the conversation. It's about how the conversation is being had. Okay, I hope that's helpful. Okay, Carlin, we have a lot of words from Carlin. Okay, cool. So I have a situation. I have a friend, best friend, 28 years or so, and I drew the line the last time she lashed out at me on the telephone. The last convo on the phone was Easter, which ended oddly, and I stepped away from her, which caused her to pull back so far like another planet, and I was happy with the distance, and that made me analyze our friendship and whether I need it or not, and I don't feel like I do. Great. Well, you're clear then. Is that okay? I don't have to keep something just because it's always been there, do I? No, absolutely not. And great question. This is a big one for people. Loyalty that bleeds into the loss of self and the loss of autonomy and the loss of who we are. A friendship is never worth it. A relationship, a friendship, a romance, nothing is ever worth it if you have to sacrifice so much of yourself that you lose yourself. I'm trying to remember what you said. Another planet happy with the 28 lashed out. Okay, if somebody's lashing out with you regularly, I think I would need a little bit more detail about what lashing out means in this case. Like, yeah, maybe you could share in the chat what kind of lashing out are we talking about. But generally speaking, if somebody's lashing out at you and you have no part in it, they're just a lasher outer, at a certain point, you're not going to be okay with that. And no, 1,000,000%, you do not need to keep a relationship just because it's been there a long time. The only relationships we keep over time are the ones that continue to work. Meaning, and this is a big hint, usually both people have to keep evolving, and miraculously, the evolving they do has to balance out the evolving you do. In other words, I've grown and changed so much since I was 20 that the people in my life when I was 20 years old, I mean, I don't even know if I would have anything in common with them or anything to say to them unless they themselves have been growing in such a way that we happen to still get along. Or maybe they didn't have any growing to do, but I had a ton of growing to do. And maybe now that I did all my growing, I can actually meet them at the place they already were. It just depends on the specific situation. It was Easter morning. Cool. I don't think when it happened is relevant, but thank you for sharing that it was Easter morning. But I would have to know what kind of lashing out to say more about it. What does the lashing out look like? What did they say to you? Did they just attack you for no reason out of nowhere? Say a little bit more about that. But the answer to the question is I don't have to keep something just because it's always been there is 100% no. And in fact, 9 times out of 10, something that's always been there is going to go stagnant or die or really need to change. Relationships really need to be re-upped and changed as the individuals in them change. People change over time. And this is where we get back to relationships are always transactional. So if the original contract you had that was unstated with the person, in let's say in my example of me in my 20s, was we always make jokes together and all we do is be jokey. But then I grow up and do some of my, here comes my foot, self-help healing work. And I realize I don't want to be jokey all the time. I want to have some vulnerability in my relationships. But that person stays making jokes all the time. Well, the contract has now changed. If the contract used to be we make jokes together, but I've changed, I need a new contract. I need to say to that friend, hey, is it okay if we have some intimacy and some deep talks too? I don't want to always just make jokes. And then jokey friend might go like, nah, I don't want that. I want to make jokes. And then you might not be able to be friends anymore because you might have a different contract you want to work under. Or they might say, sure, I can do some of that sometimes, but not all the time. Or they might say, yeah, I can totally do that. And then based on what they say, you have to negotiate going forward and see how it works. See what you're willing to give up and what you're not willing to give up, which brings us back to, how do I know what I'm willing to give up and what I'm not willing to give up? You've got to be willing to be present in your body to feel how good or bad, nourishing or not nourishing, does it feel to be in this person's presence? If it's not nourishing and you don't feel better after, there is no point in doing it. Please hear that sentence. If it's not nourishing and you don't feel better after, there is no point in doing it. Any reason you would give me that there is would definitely necessarily be codependency or people pleasing or both. All right, let's see what you said. She and I hadn't spoken in a few days. She had a friend in town. I was looking forward to hearing how it went. She called me. I was just finishing meditating, answered the phone. She was angry because she thought I didn't want to talk to her. Easter's a big deal for her parents are not alive. So she said, oh my God, this is a lot, Carlin. She was angry about her parents being gone. Sad to have Easter alone. And she didn't like the way I sounded on the phone, I guess. So she lashed out. So the lashing out, though, you're not telling me what the lashing out was. I'm just asking, what was the lashing out? Fuck you. But thank you for the context. I did need that context. It sounds to me, okay, here's what it sounds like to me as I read this. She was angry and triggered. So she believed that because you weren't responding, that meant something that to you it didn't mean. For you, not responding was because you were meditating and you hadn't had a chance to talk to her yet. For her, she invented a narrative that you not responding meant she didn't care about you or something like that. She invented a narrative. So instead of saying, here's what she should have done that would have worked. Is she had said to you, like I gave in my example earlier, hey, so I'm really triggered right now. I feel really vulnerable because it's the holidays and I have such a hard time around the holidays. You weren't answering the phone just now. I'm making up a narrative in my head that says you don't care about me. That's not it, right? What is really going on? Why didn't you answer the phone? And then you would have an opportunity to say, no, I was just meditating. And then she, if she were mature and evolved, would say something like, oh, okay, got it. My bad. I was making up a narrative that you don't like me and that I'm abandoned and I'm all alone. But it sounds to me like this is not a person who's conscious and aware enough to be able to own her stuff like that and watch her own patterns and name them. Instead, she just lashes out, as you said. You said, yes, basically she didn't like the way I sounded and was angry because I didn't sound like I wanted to talk to her. It just made me take a step back and realize that I'm walking on eggshells. Yeah, walking on eggshells is a terrible, terrible feeling. When you feel like you have to walk on eggshells, that's a time where you need to bring that up with a person. And you need to try to address with them, hey, I feel like I'm on eggshells all the time with you. And then you'll watch how they respond. If they're healthy and mentally stable, Jamie's asking if they have mental issues. If they're healthy and well, they'll be able to say, oh my God, what am I doing that's making you feel like you're having to walk on eggshells? But this person, Carlin, does not sound like she's capable of that. She's only capable of, remember the beginning of this talk? Blame, shame, attack, punish, and judge. Those are the 5 things I told you never to do when you're asking for your needs to get met. And she did all of them. So you guys, thank you, Carlin, for the example. This is the exact thing the point I'm making. Carlin can't be friends with this person because this person blames her, shames her, attacks her, judges her, and punishes her instead of kindly and considerately asking for her needs to get met. So perfect example. I hope that makes sense, Carlin. Let me know if you have any follow-up questions. Okay, Jamie, maybe you have a question you want to throw in? Mental problems. I'm just going to respond to that. When you say, does she have mental problems? Jamie responding to Carlin. We have to be careful with that because people can sometimes, kind people like you guys, Jamie and Carlin and everyone here, can use other people's mental problems as a justification to stay in relationship with people who are harming you. You can also, I see what one thing you could be getting at, Jamie. I'm not sure if this is what you're getting at, but you could have empathy for somebody's mental problems and then distance yourself a bit, but still have a relationship with them. But you have to be really careful you don't use the diagnosis of mental problems as a justification to keep taking their shit. If you feel exhausted and drained after hanging out with someone, there is no reason to do that to yourself, except codependency, people pleasing, victimization. There's no healthy reason for that in life. Let's see what Jamie says. You're totally right that we're the type of people that stay in relationships longer than we should, because I always end up giving people the benefit of the doubt and hoping to see them grow and be better. Yeah, that doesn't tend to work very well. Now, it depends on the situation. And if you gave me some I got you. If you gave me some specific examples, I could tell you very quickly, because I have a pretty honed sense of when somebody is mentally unwell and unable to grow and get better versus when somebody is unable to do so. So that's a spidey sense that you develop over time, and it takes time to learn. But it sounds to me like you're dealing with a fair amount of people who do not have the capacity to actually grow and change. And I hate to do this, but I'm going to challenge you a little bit, Jamie. The idea, when a lot of people say they're giving people the benefit of the doubt and hoping to see them grow and change, they're actually saying what the real truth is. I don't want to go through the discomfort of calling them out on their stuff, because I don't think it's going to go well. So maybe they'll just change, which is really just you or us living in fantasy. And fantasy is a real addictive pattern some people get into. Oh, they'll change. Maybe they'll grow. Maybe they'll get better. Maybe they'll change. Fantasy. If you have evidence that shows you that many, many times over many, many years in a row, this is a person who does a lot of work on themselves and likes to change, then okay. But if you're talking about a person who habitually does the same patterns of behavior over and over and has shown no evidence of changing or any interest in introspection or self-awareness, then you, my friend, are in fantasy about who they are. And that's where we each have to get, we empaths, psychics, spiritual people, creatives, we have to get in reality enough to see. It's very easy to go to fantasy. I give people the benefit of the doubt. Translation, I live in a delusional reality where I don't see who's sitting in front of me, and I'm not willing to see the truth of who they are. I was just having this conversation with a client recently about, you have to remember that consciousness includes everything and judges nothing. Consciousness, the realm of conscious awareness, includes all energies, including hateful, shaming, judging, shitty people. So if you're unwilling to see that somebody in front of you is actually hateful, shaming, judging, or punishing, you're living in denial of reality. You are not being conscious. You're in fantasy, which is not reality. So it's important that we get practiced at admitting and getting clear about the fact that this universe is not made up of all people who are going to grow and change like you. You're a grower and a changer. But there are so many humans on this planet who are not interested in the slightest in growth and change. And it's our responsibility as grow changey people to get into reality about who's sitting in front of us. Is this a person who actually wants to change? Or are they just saying they want to change, but not interested at all in the hard, heavy lifting of change? I hope that's helpful. Jamie, let me know if you have further follow-ups. Jacqueline says, the aunt I was closest to growing up was estranged from the rest of our family for about the last 8 years and has slowly started coming around again. However, there's been no discussion with her about why exactly she stayed away for so long and how hurtful it was for her to just drop out of our lives. Wow. Should I try to talk with her about how it affected me or not say anything? Okay, great. Thank you for this question, Jacqueline. This is very specific, very clear, and I appreciate the question. This depends on a couple things. How much do you love her? How intimate and vulnerable and real of a relationship do you want to have with her? Is she a safe person to have vulnerable conversations with? And is she mature enough to own her truth? So those are the questions you have to ask yourself. Do I care enough to have a closer relationship with this person? Because if you bring this up to her, it's going to create intimacy between you. But if she's a mean, evil lady, my question to you would be, why do you want intimacy with a mean, evil lady? But if she's a kind-hearted, generous person who you love a lot and you feel hurt in your heart that you don't understand why she was gone so long, then yeah, you need to ask her in a loving way, hey, when you left, going back to my example of how we do this from the beginning, when you left, I felt really sad. Can you help me understand what happened there? Rather than, why did you leave us? What's wrong with you? That was so shitty. That would be judgment, blaming, attacking, punishing, shaming. So I have faith in you, Jacqueline, knowing you a little bit, that you would be perfectly capable of saying to her, hey, I'm sure you had your reasons, but I just want you to know when you left, it broke my heart because I loved you so much and you were the fun aunt. And I missed you so much when you were gone. Would you be willing to tell me what happened and why you left? Question mark? Not, so tell me why you left and what happened. Demand. The difference between a demand and a question is the difference between night and day in a relationship. If you ask her a question, would you be willing to tell me? That gives her the opportunity to say, I'm not really ready to talk about that yet. And you could say, okay, I love you and I'll be here when you're ready. Or she may say something different. You'll be giving her the opportunity also with an open-ended question to say, I'm glad you brought it up. I'm sorry I never said anything. Here's what happened. So that would be the most effective way to do that. So I hear you saying you used to be very close to her. She was the fun aunt. So are you close to her now? And would you like to be even closer to her? And is she a safe person to have vulnerable conversations with? Those are my questions for you now, Jacqueline. And by safe person, I mean, if you go to her vulnerably, is she going to attack you, shame you, blame you, judge you? Or as Carlin says, lash out at you? Then she's probably not a safe person to have a real, vulnerable, intimate conversation with. And I don't recommend it. But if she's someone who's kind, when people are emotionally honest with her, go for it. That's how you create intimacy. By stating your needs, telling the truth, being vulnerable, kind, and honest without attacking, shaming, blaming, or punishing or judging. Does that make sense, Jacqueline? Let me know if you have further questions. All right. So we have not close now. We used to have deep, heartfelt conversations. I would like to be close again. Yeah. So then my only remaining question is she safe? Is she someone who you have observed is safe to have an intimate conversation with? Okay, great. I'm glad that makes sense. My pleasure. And Cindy says, thank you, Carlin, for the example. I got a lot from it. Yay. Does the word please work all the time? No, absolutely not. The word please does not work when what is behind the word is a covert blaming, shaming, judging, attacking, or punishing. If I go, please, can you do this? I'm in judgment of you and I'm attacking you. But if I go, please, can you do this? You might say no. And I might have to go, okay. Ouch, but okay. Can you please is can be really used as a manipulative tactic to covertly coerce someone into doing something. So you just have to be careful. What's the true subtextual motivation, to use acting lingo, that is behind your please? Please can oftentimes be a covert demand and have no question in it. Questions work. Actual open-ended, I have no attachment to the outcome questions work. Please with a demand behind it, or just a straight demand. At work, people will do your demands if you're the boss because they're afraid to lose their jobs, but then they'll hate you secretly. But at home, If it's got covert demand behind it, it's not going to work. Cool. Other questions anybody has, or is there anybody have another example they want to throw up into the chat about when to heal it versus let it go, when to talk about it versus not talk about it? I'm happy to take any questions in these last 2 minutes. If not, we can go ahead and wrap up early. I'm certainly tired enough to end early. And it's been a pleasure to be here with you guys tonight. Thank you all for your questions and thank you for your presence. It's a treat to see you. Let's see, what do I have for you? Okay, highest level healing begins again. That's my 4-week healing class. We do intensive feedback like this in class on Zoom once a week on Fridays from 1 to 3 p.m. Eastern, along with an energy healing that is very powerful, very transformative each week. Plus, you get 2 private healing sessions of 50 minutes each with this bitch right here within the 4 weeks of class. So we start that again August 26th for 4 Fridays, 1 to 3 p.m. Eastern, plus 2 private sessions that we schedule separately from class. We do in-depth human design analysis. If that's a thing that you want in your private session, you can absolutely have it. And that's just $475 for that entire class, which is very affordable when you consider that my private sessions are $250 for 50 minutes. So I hope you'll take advantage. I'll put that here in the chat. $475 for the 4-week class. And that's called Highest Level Healing. And you can go to katierubin.com to click on classes or energy healing and then classes, I think it is. And then you can register for that there, or you can just email me and say that you're interested in the class and you have some questions, or you're interested in the class and you'd like to register, at which point you can just Venmo me at Katie the Rubin to reserve your spot. We start August 26th, and I'd love to have you guys there. Thank you so much for being here tonight. You guys take good care. I'll see you next time. Bye. Shake it out, Squeezle.